Житейски съвети от Уорън Бъфет. Те наистина могат да променят вашето бъдеще, ако вие се вслушате в тях. Искате ли да промените вашето бъдеще? Ето ви няколко идеи. Здравейте! Аз съм Антонета и се радвам да споделя с вас поредното интересно видео в нашия канал. Преди да продължим с днешното видео, не забравяйте да натиснете това бутонче за харесване, споделете и абонирайте се за нашия канал, ако сте нови. Чувствайте се свободни да разгледате и другите видеоклипове в нашия канал, а така също и нашия уебсайт. И сега, нека да започваме и да не се откланяме повече, защото тук сме се събрали за да говорим за Уорън Бъфет и неговите житейски съвети, как да подобрите и вие вашия си живот, за да бъдете по-успешни. Има няколко основни правила, които трябва да запомните, когато става въпрос за постигане на успех, а това е да инвестирате във вашето здраве и щастие. Трябва да сте много амбициозни, търпеливи и много дисциплинирани. Търпението и дисциплината са много важни. Намерете си модел за подражание в областта, в която искате да успеете. И когато става въпрос за инвестиране, няма друг мъж, когото да слушате, освен Уорън Бъфет. Той е един от най-влиятелните, най-успешните и най-богатите инвеститори днес. На мен ми е любимият човек, любимият инвеститор. Така, във видеото може да гледате как той обсъжда някои важни точки за това как да успеете. Освен това, вътре споделя с зрителите си важен житейски съвет, който ще промени бъдещето ви.
70 years ago, I was in high school. Almost a third as long as the country has been around. And when I was in high school, I really only had two things on my mind: girls and cars. and I wasn't doing very well with girls, so we'll talk about cars. But let's just imagine that when we finish, I'm going to let each one of you pick out the car of your choice. Sounds good, doesn't it? Pick it out, any color, you name it. It'll be tied up with a bow, and it'll be at your house tomorrow. And you say, well, what's the catch? And the catch is that it's the only car you're going to get in your lifetime. Now, what are you going to do knowing that that's the only car you're ever going to have and you love that car? You're going to take care of it like you cannot believe. Now, what I'd like to suggest is you're not going to get only one car in your lifetime, but you're going to get one body and one mind, and that's all you're going to get. And that body and mind feels terrific now, but it has to last you a lifetime. The most important thing is to be able to define which ones you can come to an intelligent decision on and which ones are beyond your capacity to evaluate. You don't have to be right about thousands and thousands of companies. You only have to be right about a couple. I met Bill Gates on July 5th, 1991. We were out in Seattle, and Bill said, "You've got to have a computer." And I said, "Why?" And he said, you can do your income tax on it. I said, "I don't have any income. Berkshire doesn't pay a dividend." He said, "Well, you can keep track of your portfolio." And I said, "I only have one stock." I said, I mean, and he says, "It's going to change everything." And I said, "Well, will it change whether people chew gum?" And he said, "Well, probably not." And I said, "Well, will it change what kind of gum they chew?" And I said, "Well, then I'll stick to chewing gum and you stick to computers, you know." I don't have to understand all kinds of business. There's all kinds of business I don't understand. But there's thousands of opportunities there. I did understand the Bank of America, you know, and I'll be able, I'm able to do that. I'm able to understand some given percentage. But Ted Williams wrote a book called The Science of Hitting. And in The Science of Hitting, he's got a diagram, shows him at the plate, and he's got the strike zone divided into 77 squares, each the size of a baseball. And he says, if I only swing at pitches in my sweet zone, which he shows there, and he has what his batting average would be, which is 400. If he had to swing at low outside pitches, but still in the strike zone, his average would be 230. He said the most important thing in hitting is waiting for the right pitch. Now, he was at a disadvantage because if the count was 0-2 or 1-2 or so on, even if that ball was down where he was only going to bat 230, he had to swing at it. In investing, there's no called strikes. People can throw Microsoft at me and, you name it, any stock, General Motors, and I don't have to swing. And nobody's going to call me out on called strikes. I only get a strike called if I swing at a pitch and miss. So I can wait there and look at thousands of companies day after day, and only when I see something I understand and when I like the price at which it's selling, then if I swing, if I hit it, fine. If I miss it, it's a strike. But it's an enormously advantageous game. And it's a terrible mistake to think you have to have an opinion on everything. You only have to have an opinion on a few things. In fact, I've told students, if when they got out of school, they got a punch card with 20 punches on it, and that's all the investment decisions they got to make in their entire life, they would get very rich because they would think very hard about each one. And you don't need 20 right decisions to get very rich. 4 or 5 will probably do it over time. So I don't worry too much about the things I don't understand. If you understand some of these businesses that are coming along and can spot things on, if you can spot on Amazon, for example, I mean, it's a tremendous accomplishment what Jeff Bezos has done. And I tip my hat to him. He's a wonderful businessman. He's a good guy, too. But could I have anticipated that he would be the success and 10 others wouldn't be? I'm not good enough to do that. But fortunately, I don't have to. I don't have to form an opinion on Amazon. And I did form an opinion on the Bank of America, and I formed an opinion on Coca-Cola. I mean, Coca-Cola's been around since 1886. There's 1.8 billion 8-ounce servings of Coca-Cola products sold every day. Now, if you take 1 penny and get 1 penny extra, that's $18 million a day. And 18 million times 365 is 7 billion, 3 less 730 billion, or $6,570,000,000. So annually, $6,570,000,000 from 1 penny. Do you think Coca-Cola is worth a penny more than Joe's Cola? I think so. So, and I've got about 127 years of history that would indicate it. So those are the kind of decisions I like to make. And you may have an entirely different field of expertise than I would have, and probably much more up to date in terms of the kind of businesses that we're seeing evolve. And you can get very rich if you just understand a few of them and understand their future.
What is it that you two share? What makes this friendship so satisfying for both of you?
Well, I think we both certainly share a curiosity about the world, and we come from 2 different but related worlds. So I think we probably spent about 10 hours of this 1-hour visit that Bill was scheduled on July 5th, 1991. His mother had to talk him into it. And we weren't halfway. I mean, we had gotten no place in terms of our eventual agenda just in that time. In fact, the governor of Washington came by, and Bill's dad had to come into the bedroom and pull us out of it. We didn't want to. He was a little embarrassed we were talking to him. Well, we have fun to start with. Right. I mean, every relationship should have a lot of fun in it. And we find the world in just such an interesting place. So we like to compare notes on it. When we compare notes, we have a lot of fun doing it.
Part of the time, as I remember the conversation, by the way, there's a remarkable documentary about Warren, which is on HBO. I think it premieres on January 30th, on Monday. Yeah. You should take time to take a look at it. Bill's involved in that, and you will see, in a sense, it's called, I think, Becoming Warren Buffett.
Yeah, that's what it's called. Becoming. Took me 86 years, but I got there.
You're doing well on it, though, aren't you?
Well, so far, yeah. But best is yet to come.
The other thing that you share, other than reading, is optimism. You believe in America.
Absolutely.
You have said to me more than once, I would give up a year of my life just to know what the next 50 is going to be like.
Yeah, even the next 4 now. I mean,
why'd you pick 4?
I don't know, just a number that came to me. It is just fascinating what's happened just in my lifetime. In the 86 years. I should mention one thing about reading. It was at the library here at Columbia that I wish I spent probably more time than any other student. I lived there practically, but And I pulled the book out there, happened to be Who's Who in America, and it told me something about my professor, Benjamin Graham, and then I looked up and I went to the library and I said, I want to learn more about this because I learned this over here. That changed my whole life. You know, we own Geico now because of that librarian directing me to some other book and then following through on that. It's the chance. I read about 1/5 the pace that Bill does, but I still spend 5 or 6 hours a day reading. I mean, it just, you can learn so much. I particularly love biography, just, you know, to be able to live the lives of these people that have been so extraordinary, the lessons and the, you know, the discouragements they face, just everything about it. So you can't get enough of reading it.
What surprises you most about Bill?
That's an interesting question. I guess what really surprised me is, initially, we just found so many things to connect on. He did try to sell me a computer. That's probably the only sale he didn't make, although the computer changed my life for the better in a big way subsequently. But, well, he just had this same curiosity.
Yeah. And the other word you have used is focus.
Well, the focus is no question about it. I mean, both of us got to where we are in a big way because of focus.
Bill, what surprises you about Warren?
Thank you both so much for being here. My question, again, is a little bit on the political spectrum. I was wondering what you're both most hopeful about in this new political environment we have, and also what you're both most worried about.
You want to take hope or worried, Warren?
Well, I'm confident that America will move ahead. It's been, you know, from the time I was born until now, the real GDP per capita of this country has gone up 6-for-1. I mean, nobody ever dreamt that would be possible. And when you look at what's happened in this country over 240 years, you know, it's an absolute miracle. When I went to Columbia Business School in September 1950, one woman in the class. I mean, this country moves forward, and you can't stop it. So I'm enormously optimistic. I say the luckiest person born in the history of the world is the baby being born today in this country. And we will go and, you know, everybody, half the country always is going to be somewhat unhappy, or close to half, about the last election. But I grew up in a household in the late 1930s. My dad was very Republican. My sisters and I didn't get dessert unless we said something bad about Roosevelt. I mean, it was required. And I heard all these apocalyptic views about after his third term there'll be no more elections. I've been hearing that all my life, and you know, year after year after year, with occasional hiccups and an occasional seizure like we had in 2008 and 2009. But this country, it's all profit, folks. I mean, you know, when I came in, just think of what it would have been like in 1776, nothing here. Yeah. And now we've got...
And the velocity of change
it just keeps moving.
Day.
I mean, guys like Bill, you know, they don't quit. Yeah. You know, I mean, he moves on to something like polio. He mentions 50 cases in the world. There were more than 50 in the ward where I went when I was a teenager to see a friend of my sister's. And they were all in these rocking machines and everything. They were destined to a terrible, terrible life. And it was just one ward in Omaha. And now that's the yearly total, thanks initially to, as well as currently, to Rotary and some, but people kept working on it. This world moves forward, and it's been doing, I bought my first stock when I was 11 in April of 1942. The Dow was 100. If you haven't looked, it's 20,000. Something good must have happened in between. And it's going to keep happening, folks.
Bill, I know you share the optimism. What about concerns?
Hi, my name is Eugenia. I'm in the engineering school here at Columbia. And I wanted to ask, you were talking about that you love reading. I wanted to ask if you have a particular book that it changed your life, like the way you think about things. And I also wanted to ask, what is the thing that you admire the most about each other? Like you, Bill, about Warren, and the other way around. Thank you.
They sort of touched on the second question, but go ahead, they may want to add to it. Books, though, first. Changed your life.
Well, a book did change my life, and it was by a fellow who taught here at Columbia, Benjamin Graham, and I read the book when I was 19 called The Intelligent Investor. And I'd been interested in investments since I was maybe 7 or 8, but I'd read every book in the Omaha Public Library by the time I was 11.
So why do you think you were interested in investing when you were 7 or 8?
Because I was too dumb to get interested at 4. My dad had a very small investment firm, and I would just go down and I read all the books that he had there, waiting to go to lunch or whatever it might be, and then I went to the public library and read them all, and it just was a fascinating subject to me. But I didn't have any. I knew what everybody thought and all of that at an early age, but what Graham wrote made sense. I just happened to pick that book up at a bookstore in Lincoln, Nebraska.
But to investing per se, is there something about your core competence that made investing the perfect place for you to be?
Yeah, it certainly wasn't to be a pro football player. I looked. It was a question of zeroing out all the other incompetencies, and I was left with one thing,
Just the allocation of capital.
I was actually wired in a way that was. This would be something I would be good at.
So wired in what way?
I can't tell you precisely, but I've got the right temperament for it, which is much more important than IQ. If you've got more than 120 points of IQ, sell the rest to somebody else. You don't need it in investments, but you do need the right temperament. You do. You do have to be able to think for yourself. And getting back to, the earlier question, the first question I ask myself when I look at a business is it important and easy what I can determine about this business? Yeah. And a lot of them don't make it. Now, Bill is looking for hard questions that plague society, and where intellect and money may make a difference. They may not for a while, but he's taking on the tough things. My job is to find easy things. I'm looking for 1-foot bars to step over, rather than 8-foot bars to jump over. But that's not irrational if you're looking at the investment universe. But reading is key. On the biography, on the book thing, I will tell you a wonderful book to read. I can tell you a number of them. Intelligent Investor, obviously, if you're in the investment field. But Katharine Graham's autobiography is a marvelous book, and it's absolutely honest, told by an incredible woman who had an incredible life and then wrote honestly about it.
And someone who you knew very well and invested with, and she was a bit reluctant and had to be assured, that
she was afraid of me, actually.
Yes. But what makes that book so much?
It is such a broad range of human experience, honestly told. I mean, you couldn't have, nobody in Hollywood could write a scenario that she lived through, and just to see that world develop, how she reacted to it and everything. You can learn so much. My partner Charlie Munger just loves Ben Franklin. You can learn from other people and their mistakes, and I find biography is my favorite.
But Warren, you have often said you still tap dance to work.
Absolutely.
Because you can paint with your own colors.
Yeah, I'm as excited about tomorrow in terms of what's going to happen as I was when I started. I was having a lot of fun when I started, but I'm having just as much fun now. And when I was here at Columbia, I had this terrible fear. It was impossible for me to speak in public. I mean, I wasn't able to do it. I actually read an ad in the New York Times. I went down to Midtown, signed up for a course, gave the guy a check, and then stopped payment on the check. I mean, I just petrified. But finally, and actually, after you get through hearing me today, maybe you'll wish I'd stayed afraid of public speaking, but that's another question. When I got out to Omaha, I finally decided I just had to do it, so I gave a guy $100 in cash, and once I parted with $100 in cash, I'd jump off the Grand Canyon to get my money's worth. So, but it changed my life. But I would say this: don't fear failure. Almost everything that's turned out, I got turned down by Harvard. The best thing that ever happened. Among other some good things that happened that didn't seem good at the time. Don't worry about it. And don't let it eat at you or look back. Just keep going, because you're going to have some things and forget them. Go forward.
Уорън Бъфет дава съвети от много години насам. Самонаправеният милиардер и изпълнителен директор на Berkshire Hathaway трябва да бъде един от хората, които да слушате и вие, когато става въпрос за инвестиране. А също така дори и за други житейски съвети. С дългогодишния си опит в областта той определено знае какво е успех и как да го постигне. Ако искате да промените живота си към по-добро бъдеще, слушайте и търсете информация за Уорън Бъфет. И така, благодаря ви, че бяхте с нас до края днес. Надявам се, че сте намерили това видео за полезно. И не забравяйте да натиснете бутончето, да го споделите с повече хора, да заповядате в нашия сайт Успех с Антоанета, както и в нашата частна група, ако искате да инвестирате. И така, живи, здрави и много, много късмет ви желая. И успехи най-вече!